Chapter 2. Waging War. Overview. This chapter begins by examining the material foundations of warfare, its dependence on manpower, resources, and financial strength, and highlights the severe consequences that prolonged war can inflict on a nation. It emphasizes the importance of quick, decisive victories. Waging war demands a vast consumption of human, material, and financial resources. If the war drags on, it exhausts the troops, weakens their morale, and depletes national wealth. Furthermore, other feudal states may seize the opportunity to launch attacks. In all military operations, success depends on acting swiftly, in seizing the initiative, in launching offensives, and in exploiting favorable opportunities. Even in protracted external campaigns, decisive victories must be achieved quickly. The use of force must be as swift as thunder and lightning, striking before the enemy can react. Besieging a fortified city for too long dulls weapons and breaks spirits. Only with rapid action can victory be gained as easily as splitting bamboo. Thus, in war, clumsy speed is better than clever delay. Those who move quickly seize opportunity, while those who hesitate invite trouble. From this perspective, Sun Tzu opposed storming heavily fortified cities with the crude weapons of his time. He also objected to repeatedly conscripting soldiers and transporting supplies from within one's own country. Instead, he advocated for sourcing provisions locally from the enemy's land, generously rewarding soldiers with wealth, treating captives with respect, and using seized materials to strengthen one's own forces. Only by doing so, he believed, could commander preserve his strength and achieve rapid victory. Based on the practical conditions of warfare during his era, especially limitations in transportation and national finances, Sun Tzu proposed the concrete principle: do not conscript soldiers twice, do not transport provisions 3 times. This view reflected the productive capacity of society at the time and demonstrated Sun Tzu's practical, materialist approach to studying warfare. 1. Win fast or wear down. The cost of prolonged conflict. Sun Tzu said, whenever an army is deployed for war, it requires 1,000 war chariots, 1,000 supply wagons, and 100,000 armored soldiers. Provisions must be transported over 1,000 miles. The overall cost, including the rear and frontline operations, the reception of envoys and strategists, materials like glue and lacquer for weapon maintenance, and the upkeep of armor and vehicles, will consume 1,000 pieces of gold per day. Only when such preparations are in place can a force of 100,000 troops be dispatched to battle. Therefore, military operations must aim for swift and decisive victories. Prolonged campaigns will exhaust the troops and sap their fighting spirit. Besieging cities will deplete manpower, and keeping armies in the field for long durations will drain the state's finances. When soldiers grow weary, their morale declines, resources run out, and the economy becomes strained, neighboring states will seize the opportunity to launch attacks. At that point, even the wisest strategist will be unable to reverse the downward tide. Thus, in military affairs, one often hears of commanders who, though clumsy, secure victory through speed. But one never hears of those who achieve success through protracted and overly skillful maneuvering. There has never been a case in history where a prolonged war has brought benefit to a nation. Therefore, those who do not fully understand the costs and dangers of warfare cannot truly understand its advantages either. Reflections. In warfare, military strategists throughout history and across cultures have emphasized the principle of speed is of the essence and the strategy of swift and decisive battles. Napoleon once famously said, "I may lose a battle, but I will never lose a minute." This principle is especially crucial in offensive operations, where logistical demands are enormous and transportation is arduous. Prolonged warfare inevitably leads to economic strain, draining national resources, exhausting manpower and supplies, and causing public hardship and a depleted treasury. If the conflict drags on, it will also blunt the troops' strength and morale, leading to disorder and opening opportunities for enemies to strike. At that point, neighboring states may seize the weakness to rise, resulting in encirclement and a dire predicament. During the Warring States period, King Min of Qi Min Huang, launched successive military campaigns year after year, weakening his nation. His early victories gradually turned into defeats, a cautionary tale worth pondering. In 301 BC, the warlike King Min of Qi allied with Qin, Han, and Wei to attack Chu and seize Chisha. In 298 BC, Qi allied again with Han and Wei to attack Qin and captured the vital Hangul Pass. In 287 BC, Qi joined forces with Zhao, Han, Wei, and Chu to attack Qin, forcing Qin to abolish its imperial title. In 286 BC, Qi defeated Qin, destroyed the state of Song, and invaded Chu once again. However, the years of relentless warfare blunted the edge of Qi's army, depleted its strength, and eroded unity among its troops. Seizing the moment, King Zhao of Yan accepted the counsel of General Louis and led a coalition of forces from Yan, Qin, Chu, Han, Zhao, and Wei. In a single campaign, they captured over 70 cities of Qi, dealing it a crushing blow. 2. Logistics is strategy, feeding the army wisely. A skilled commander does not repeatedly conscript soldiers from within his own country, nor does he continually transport provisions from home. Weapons and equipment may be supplied by the state, but food and supplies should be gathered from the enemy's territory. In this way, the army's logistics can remain sufficient and sustainable. Reflections. In this section, Sun Tzu discusses the issue of military logistics and puts forward the concept of foraging from the enemy. The old saying, "An army marches on its stomach," holds especially true in ancient warfare, where the greatest consumption was in the supply of provisions. Sun Tzu clearly states, when a state mobilizes its troops, it impoverishes its people. Transporting supplies over long distances leads to hardship for the common people. Given the primitive state of transportation at the time, long-distance supply lines were not only costly and burdensome, leading to famine among soldiers and exhaustion among civilians, but they also increased the economic strain on the nation, draining resources from the heartland. Furthermore, these long supply lines often became vulnerable targets for enemy attacks. Once the supply route was cut off, the army would be left in a perilous situation, trapped without provisions. To counter this, Sun Tzu advocated the principle of using the enemy's resources to feed one's own army. Throughout history, this idea of foraging from the enemy remained a guiding principle of military strategy. It reflects Sun Tzu's core philosophy: seize from the enemy and use it to sustain the war effort. A practical example of this principle was demonstrated by Liu Bang during his campaign against Chang'e, when he turned to Qianlu instead. In the intercalary 9th month of 208 BC, Liu Bang led his army westward. Due to a shortage of food supplies, his attempt to capture Chang'e failed, and he moved his troops to Gaoyang. At that moment, Li Shiqi advised Liu Bang to attack Qianlu, pointing out that it was a strategic transportation hub, with defensible terrain, available grain, and potential recruits. It was a place suitable for both offense and defense. Liu Bang followed the advice, coordinated an attack from both inside and outside, and successfully captured Qianlu, thus resolving his logistical crisis. 3. The wise general forages from the enemy. Therefore, a wise general must ensure that food supplies are taken from the enemy's territory. One measure of grain seized from the enemy is worth 20 measures transported from one's own state. One load of forage taken from the enemy is equivalent to 20 loads brought from home. Reflections. In ancient times, the transportation of military provisions was often extremely costly, and it required the deployment of troops to guard the supply routes. This not only placed a heavy financial burden on the state, but also diverted energy and manpower from actual combat. Therefore, military strategists throughout history emphasized obtaining food supplies from enemy territory. Such an approach not only helped ease the economic pressure on one's own country and reduce the logistical strain, but also weakened the enemy's strength to some extent while offering a higher efficiency and return. As Sun Tzu stated, Feeding off the enemy's grain is worth 20 times our own, and a bundle of their straw is worth 20 of ours, reflecting his belief that taking advantage of the enemy can lead to growing stronger through defeating the enemy. During the Three Kingdoms period, Zhuge Liang launched 6 northern expeditions against Chao Wei via the Qishan route. He racked his brains to solve the problem of military logistics. Even with the invention of wooden oxen and gliding horses, transportation difficulties remained unresolved. As a result, he had to adopt Sun Tzu's strategy of feeding off the enemy, sustaining war through war. In the spring of 231 AD, Zhuge Liang launched his 5th expedition to Qishan. He ordered the vanguard troops to pass through Jianghe and advance via Qinsong. The cunning Sima Yi anticipated that Zhuge Liang's intent was to harvest wheat in Longxi to supply his army, and thus led his troops to defend the grain fields in the counties of Qianshui. Sima Yi relied on the terrain to hold key positions. Due to a shortage of provisions, the Shu army was eventually forced to withdraw to Hanzhong. 4. Motivate, reward, and reinforce with enemy resources. Therefore, to inspire the troops to fight bravely, they must first be stirred to anger. To encourage them to seize the enemy's wealth, they must be rewarded accordingly. In chariot warfare, whenever 10 or more enemy chariots are captured, the soldier who seized them first should be rewarded. The captured chariots should be integrated into one's own ranks, with the banners replaced by those of the victor. Prisoners of war should be treated well, so that they may serve future purposes. This is how one defeats the enemy while simultaneously strengthening one's own forces. Reflections. In this section, Sun Tzu proposes using anger and rewards to inspire soldiers to fight bravely in battle and to seize enemy resources. A wise general is not only adept at stirring hatred toward the enemy to unify the troops in a shared sense of purpose and drive them forward on the battlefield, but also skilled in using captured enemy supplies to reward those who distinguish themselves in combat. This helps boost morale and combat effectiveness. At the same time, Sun Tzu advocates for treating prisoners of war with kindness and providing them with proper care. By appealing to them on a spiritual and emotional level, he sought to eliminate their desire to return home, thereby undermining the enemy's morale. These prisoners could then be used to strengthen one's own forces, achieving the goal of growing stronger by defeating the enemy. A notable example of this principle in action comes from the Warring States period. In 284 BC, during the 31st year of King Nan of Zhou's reign, King Zhao of Yan appointed General Yu Yi to lead a coalition of 6 states in invasion of Qi. The Allied forces captured over 70 cities and even took the Qi capital, Linzi, leaving only Jima and Zhu still under Qi control. The situation was dire. Tiandan, a Qi general, deliberately spread rumors that Qi soldiers feared having their noses cut off and their ancestors' tombs desecrated. The Yan troops fell for the ruse, mutilating captured Qi soldiers and digging up ancestral graves. This enraged the people and soldiers of Qi, who became fiercely determined to fight to the death for revenge and justice. Seeing that the time was ripe, Tiandan launched a bold counterattack using a fire oxen formation, decisively defeating the Yan army and reclaiming all lost territory. Similarly, at the end of the Qin dynasty, Liu Bang employed a comparable strategy, using gold and bribes to win over key gatekeepers, which allowed him to seize Xianyang with ease. 5. Swift victory is the essence of war. Therefore, in warfare, swift and decisive action is of utmost importance. Prolonged conflict should be avoided. Reflections. In warfare, time is the guarantee of victory. At the very beginning of the art of war, Sun Tzu offers a detailed discussion of the dangers that prolonged war poses to both the state and its people. For this reason, he advocates for a strategy of swift and decisive action in military offensives, better to be clumsy but fast than clever but slow. During the spring and autumn period, the states were engaged in long-term struggles for dominance, with wars consuming vast amounts of resources. In such a context, protracted conflict became a major pitfall in the use of military force, and therefore, those skilled in warfare adopted the principle of quick and decisive battle to conserve national and military strength and to ultimately achieve long-term victory through short-term effectiveness. This principle of swift warfare remains relevant in modern military strategy. A fast offensive allows a side to capitalize on the momentum of the initial strike and take the initiative in guiding the course of war. The enemy, forced to respond hastily, is often caught off guard, giving the attacker a tactical advantage and increasing the likelihood of achieving strategic objectives. 6. He who understands war holds the nation's fate. Therefore, a commander who is skilled in the art of war holds the lives of his soldiers in his hands and determines the fate of the nation. Reflections. Generals and commanders are the central pillars of all military activities. Whether it is the management of troops or the planning and execution of military operations, the role of the commander is of paramount importance. Warfare determines the rise and fall of a nation. It is a matter of life and death for the people and the survival or demise of the state. This underscores the immense responsibility borne by military leaders. An exceptional commander must not only govern the army with strict discipline, but also devise thorough strategies to achieve the greatest victory with the least cost. In contrast, a commander who lacks understanding of military tactics can cause irreparable harm to the nation. As the saying goes, a poor choice of general can lead to complete disaster, and even to the fall of a nation. This is why the art of war repeatedly emphasizes the importance of appointing capable generals. During the Song dynasty, Fan Zhongyan and Han Qi served together as deputy commissioners for military affairs in Shaanxi. In the second year of the reign of Emperor Renzong's Kongding era, 1041 CE, the Western Xia invaded. Han Qi advocated for a full-scale military response, while Fan Zhongyan believed that focus should first be placed on encouraging agriculture and sericulture, reducing forced labor, and strengthening military preparedness, without rashly going to war. Due to Han Qi's eagerness for glory and hasty advance, the Song suffered a defeat at Haoshuichuan, losing soldiers and commanders, with the cries of grieving families echoing across the fields. Fan Zhongyan, in contrast, prioritized production, military discipline, and conservation of strength. He was praised as one who commands an army of 100,000 in his heart and conquers Western Xia without a fight. This shows how much hinges on a commander with true military insight, and that the state must know its people and use them wisely. Liu Bang, when he first raised his army, was merely a low-ranking official, a Tingzhong, local magistrate, with little political or military talent. But he was quick-witted and excelled in recognizing and using talent. Among all the rebel forces during the uprising against the Qin dynasty, he was the first to capture Xianying and eventually defeated the far stronger Xiongnu to establish the Han dynasty. After his victory, Liu Bang hosted a grand banquet at the Southern Palace in Luoyang. He asked his ministers, "Why was I able to win the world while Xiongnu lost it?" Gao Qi and Wang Ling replied, "Your Majesty rewarded meritorious ministers, while Xiongnu was jealous of the capable and failed to reward contributions." Liu Bang said, "You see only one part of the answer. In strategic planning, I am inferior to Zhang Liang. In logistics and administration, I am not as capable as Shao Yi. In commanding troops, I am no match for Han Thin. These three men are outstanding talents, and I was able to employ them properly, therefore I won the world." Xiongnu had Fan Zeng, yet failed to use him, and thus he was defeated. Everyone agreed that Liu Bang's insight was profound. In the spring and autumn period, Zikin, a senior official of the state of Zhang, was also known for selecting and employing capable individuals. Among his appointees, Feng Jianzi could make crucial national decisions, Zi Taishu was handsome and articulate, Ziyu could assess the situation of neighboring states and identify their nobles by name, rank, status, and virtue, and was especially skilled in diplomacy. Bai Shun was excellent in strategic planning. Whenever the state of Zheng needed to engage in foreign diplomacy, Zikin would first consult Ziyu about the surrounding states and assign him to manage interactions. He would then take Bai Shun to the outskirts to test the feasibility of the proposed strategies. Upon returning, he would report to Feng Jianzi, who would make the final decision. Once a course of action was approved, Zikin would task Zitai Shu with its execution and dealings with high-ranking guests from other states. Because Zikin understood and utilized talent well, there were hardly any administrative failures during his tenure. This shows how crucial it is to make good use of talent, while failing to do so can lead to dire consequences. At the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, during the standoff at Guandu, Yuan Shao held overwhelming military superiority over Cao Cao, both in resources and manpower. He had brilliant strategists like Tian Feng and Zhu Shou, and formidable generals like Zhang He and Gao Lan, yet failed to use them effectively. At that time, Yuan Shao's subordinates were divided on how to proceed. Zhu Shou advised a strategy of patience and attrition, while Guotu and Shun Pei advocated for a quick, decisive battle. Yuan Shao, confident in his abundant troops and supplies, ignored Zhu Shou's wise counsel. Zhu Shou, who commanded great influence and military authority, became a target of slander from Guotu and others, who warned that his growing power could be dangerous. According to the strategist Huang Shigong's 3 strategies, when subordinates obey the sovereign, the state thrives. When the sovereign obeys his subordinates, the state falls. A general commanding armies in the field should not be involved in internal politics. As a result, Yuan Shao split Zhu Shou's forces into 3 parts, 2 of which he reassigned to Guotu and another general. Thus, Yuan Shao rejected sound advice from Zhu Shou and others and trusted the flawed strategies of Shun Pei and Guotu. Later, when Yuan Shao's advisor Su Yu obtained intelligence that Cao Cao's supplies were depleted and offered a plan to attack Su Chong, Yuan Shao not only ignored him, but suspected him of treason. Infuriated, Su Yu defected to Cao Cao, and so did Zhang He and Gao Lan. Unable to recognize and appoint the right people, Yuan Shao eventually lost the battle and died. Even Cao Cao himself considered abandoning the fight during this period. He wrote to his advisor Sun Yu in the capital for guidance. Sun Yu warned him, when both sides are exhausted, the one who retreats first will be at a disadvantage. The one who gives up will be destroyed. This is the moment when opportunity arises. With these words, he helped Cao Cao regain his confidence, eventually leading to victory. Cao Cao's success came from his ability to listen to the wise and use people according to their strengths. It was this deep understanding of leadership and talent management that led him to triumph.